there are truths you only see in the rearview mirror. They don't arrive like lightning bolts. Okay? They bleed into your awareness. Slowly, painfully, usually after a heartbreak or three. Okay? And almost always too late to change the story. And the strange thing is, no one teaches you these truths. Not your father, not your school, certainly not the glossy world of movies or TikTok therapy. Instead, you stumble into them like traps laid out in the dark. It is only when the illusion breaks, when the fairy tale image of womanhood collapses, that the real learning begins. And when it does, the lesson isn't kind. It's cold, it's sharp, it's Nietzsche. Because if there was one philosopher who dared to shatter the romantic myth of womanhood, it was Nietzsche. Not with hatred, but with surgical clarity. He didn't write for the man lost in love. He wrote for the man who wanted to see, truly see, what lies beneath the masks we all wear, especially the masks that women, consciously or unconsciously, are trained to perfect. But let me be clear, this is not a video about blaming women or painting them as villains. That would be shallow and cheap, the very opposite of what Nietzsche stood for. This is about seeing, peeling back the illusions modern men are sold, understanding the subtle, complex, often hidden dynamics between the masculine and the feminine, and why so many men learned them only after years of confusion, shame, or heartbreak. Why is this still relevant today? 'Cause, despite all our progress, most men still live inside inherited scripts. Scripts that tell them what women should be like. Scripts that teach them to idealize, to rescue, to sacrifice, not to see. This isn't just a psychological blind spot. It's a spiritual one. And as Nietzsche would say, it costs you not just your love, but your soul. And the cost, it shows up in silent marriages, in men who feel emotionally starved but can't explain why, in the quiet rage of being needed but never truly seen. It shows up in loneliness, even in relationships. But this isn't new. For thousands of years, sages, poets, and prophets have warned about the dangers of projecting illusions onto women. From ancient Sufi parables to Greek tragedies, from Schopenhauer to Simone de Beauvoir, humanity has wrestled with the question, what is a woman, truly? And why does the man only seem to understand her when it's already too late? So in this video, we're going to dig deep, historically, psychologically, and spiritually, not to find blame, but to find vision, because the truth, once seen, changes everything. Even if it arrives a little too late. To understand what Nietzsche meant, and what many men still fail to grasp until it's too late, we must step back into time, before dating apps, before romance novels, before feminism and masculinity were even concepts. Because this is not just a modern crisis, it's an ancient blindness, the eternal mystery of the feminine. Since the dawn of civilization, women have been painted as paradoxes, Eve and Lilith, the Madonna and the whore, the muse and the destroyer, the goddess and the witch. Ecology, she is Isis and Kali, Aphrodite and Medusa, soft and nurturing, yet terrifyingly powerful. Okay? And in every age, men have swung between worshiping her and fearing her. But rarely have they seen her. Because to see her requires a man to step outside of his projections, stop using her as a mirror for his needs, his longing, his salvation. Okay? And that, as Nietzsche observed, is something most men resist until pain forces them to. Nietzsche's challenge. Women are not the answer in Nietzsche's works, particularly in Thus Spoke Zarathustra and Beyond Good and Evil. Women appear not as angels or demons, but as beings with their own codes, their own instincts, strategies, and desires. He warned men not to moralize femininity, not to assume that women are simply nicer men or less aggressive versions of themselves. No, they are other, and that otherness terrifies the modern mind. In aphorism 145 of Beyond Good and Evil, Nietzsche writes, "When a woman has scholarly inclinations, there is generally something wrong with her sexuality." Now, That may sound offensive at first glance. Could dig deeper. Nietzsche isn't condemning female intelligence. He's pointing at a deeper contradiction in how men perceive women. The discomfort men feel when a woman steps outside of the roles they've imagined for her, as either nurturing or decorative. Nietzsche saw the danger in idealizing women, because the moment you place someone on a pedestal, you rob them of their humanity, and you blind yourself to their power. And worse, you make yourself small. From knights to nice guys. How the myth evolved, this blindness isn't just Nietzsche's philosophical gripe. It has roots in every major culture. In medieval Europe, the knight idealized the noble lady. Courtly love meant worshipping a woman from afar, pure, untouchable, divine. But this was not love. It was performance. A man's way of imagining a woman as the antidote to his chaos, a balm for his soul. We still see echoes of this today. In the modern nice guy, the man who does everything right, who listens, supports, pleases, and quietly resents the woman who does not reward him with love. Nietzsche would have called this a form of self-deception, because it assumes a transactional nature to femininity, as if kindness guarantees affection, as if obedience deserves intimacy. It does not. Desire has its own logic, and until a man understands that, he will always feel betrayed. The evolution of gender scripts. So let us now consider the evolution. In ancient societies, gender roles were survival-based. Men hunted, women nurtured. There was less confusion, but also less freedom. As civilization grew, so did our psychological complexity. Religions began shaping gender narratives. Women became either sacred or sinful. In Greek tragedy, Helen starts wars. Medea kills her children. In Christianity, Mary is the virgin. Eve is the curse. Fast forward to the Enlightenment, and women became subjects of debate. Rational minds argued about their capacity for thought, their moral worth, their social roles. Then came Romanticism, the worship of beauty, emotion, and the mysterious feminine. Men began writing poetry about women, but rarely to women. Again, projection. Again, blindness. By the time Nietzsche arrived in the 19th century, the world was pivoting fast. Industrialization, Darwinism, the collapse of religious certainty. All these shook the foundations of what it meant to be a man or woman. Nietzsche saw the chaos, and instead of offering comfort, he offered a mirror, a dark one. He who cannot bear the truth will chase the illusion. At the core of Nietzsche's philosophy is the call to look directly at reality, no matter how painful. He believed that most people, man included, preferred comforting lies over uncomfortable truths, and nowhere is this more evident than in love. Men often fall not in love with women, but with their own longing. They see a woman and fill her with meanings she never claimed. They assume softness means virtue. They confuse attention with devotion. They read into silences. They make sacrifices she never asked for. And then, when she fails to match the image they constructed, they feel deceived. But the deception was self-made. Nietzsche's warning was simple. Stop romanticizing. Start seeing. A woman is not your therapist, not your savior, not your reward for being good. She is a complex, evolving human being with her own instincts, fears, and shadows. To engage with her as an equal, a man must first kill the illusion of her perfection. And that is where most men falter. The feminine archetype across cultures. Jung, who deeply admired and expanded Nietzsche's insights, would later define this projection as the anima, the inner feminine within every man. When a man is disconnected from his own inner feminine, he projects it outward. He meets a woman and believes she is the magic he lacks. She is only a trigger, a mirror. Sufi poetry echoes this too. In Rumi's verses, the beloved is never just a person. She is the divine in disguise, the shattering of the ego through longing, the fire that awakens the soul, not because she loves you, but because you see your incompleteness in her. So when Nietzsche writes harshly of women, He isn't writing about women per se, but about the illusions men create around women, illusions that keep them weak, dependent, blind. To grow, a man must strip away the fantasy dot, and that is not an act of cynicism. It's an act of love, for truth, for freedom, and eventually for a woman as she truly is. By now, we've seen how history, culture, and Nietzsche himself all reveal a core truth. Many men don't see women as they are. They see them as symbols. And that confusion isn't just philosophical, it's deeply psychological. Let's now explore why. Through the lens of modern psychology, we'll examine how unconscious drives, childhood conditioning, can unexamined archetypes shape a man's perception of women, often without him even knowing it. Jung, one of Nietzsche's intellectual heirs, brought a revolutionary idea to the conversation: the anima. According to Jung, every man carries within him an unconscious feminine image, a deep inner template of woman. This internal image is shaped by everything: his mother, the women he admired growing up, fairy tales, religion, movies. But here's the catch: most men aren't aware of it. And so, when they meet a woman in the outer world, they project this inner image onto her. They think they're falling in love with her, but they're actually falling in love with the mirror. This is why love at first sight often feels so spiritual, so overwhelming. It's not about the other person. It's about the part of you that suddenly feels seen, or complete. But what happens when reality kicks in? When the real woman, with her boundaries, complexity, and individuality, doesn't align with the internal dream? Disappointment, resentment, sometimes rage. It's not because she did something wrong. It's because the projection died, okay? And the man never knew it was a projection in the first place. Attachment theory. When boys become lovers too soon. Modern psychology offers another key insight through attachment theory. Many men who idealize women do so because, emotionally, they're still trying to win the love they didn't fully receive as boys. Maybe their mother was cold, inconsistent, or emotionally unavailable. Maybe she was too dependent on them, making them feel responsible for her well-being. Maybe she was perfect, and no real woman has ever measured up since. Whatever the case, these early bonds create emotional blueprints later in life. These men unconsciously seek women who replicate those early dynamics. They try to earn love. They associate intimacy with emotional labor. They think being nice will finally get them what they always longed for: acceptance, safety, wholeness. But this makes them susceptible, not just to heartbreak, but to manipulation, because some women learn to use this hunger, not maliciously, often simply as survival. A woman who grew up needing to control affection might learn to sense which men need approval. She learns to be the dream, because being the dream gets her what she needs. And so, two wounds meet. One projects, the other performs. And neither truly sees the other, okay? The myth of the good guy versus the bad boy. Another social myth that delays a man's understanding of women is the good guy versus bad boy dynamic. Many men believe that if they are loyal, kind, emotionally available, they will be chosen. They deserve to be loved. But this isn't how attraction works. Desire is not a moral equation. Psychologist Esther Perel writes that love and desire do not always live in the same house. Love wants safety. Desire wants edge. And so, a man who makes a woman feel emotionally safe, but hides his own desires, suppresses his own needs, or lacks a sense of mystery, may find himself in the dreaded friend zone. Why? Because he gave up his polarity. Nietzsche hinted at this in his own way. When a man gives up his wildness, his ambition, his will to power, in order to be liked, he doesn't become lovable. He becomes forgettable. The solution isn't to become cruel or indifferent. It's to stop seeking approval, to reclaim one's depth, to become someone who has inner gravity, not because he manipulates women, but because he no longer needs their validation. Social conditioning and the rise of the worship culture. We also live in a cultural age that worships women, not in a sacred way, but in a marketable, image-obsessed way. Social media amplifies this. So a beautiful woman with curated selfies, poetic captions, and spiritual aesthetics is now a brand, not just a person. Young men scroll through these avatars of femininity and unconsciously create an impossible ideal. A woman who is wise like a therapist, soft like a poet, wild like a dancer, sexual like a porn star, and loyal like a saint. She doesn't exist, but the myth lives on. And so, many men chase women not for who they are, but for what possessing them might say about themselves. If I can get her, I'll be valuable. I'll be validated. I'll finally be enough. This isn't love. It's self-objectification. A silent hunger for worth dressed up as romance. Feminine power, the subtle art of influence. One of Nietzsche's most misunderstood insights was about power. He didn't say women were evil or inferior. He said their mode of power was different, quieter, subtler, often invisible to men who only recognize domination. While men are trained to use force, logic, status, women, especially historically, had to rely on influence. They learned to read emotional dynamics, sense power imbalances, and work through charm, timing, intuition. This was not manipulation. It was survival. But men rarely recognize this feminine mode of power until they've felt it, until they've changed careers, betrayed themselves, or lost their confidence over a woman's opinion. Not because she intended it, but because he gave her that power. Nietzsche's insight wasn't that women are deceptive. It was that men are naive. They don't understand the theater of power. They don't understand the emotional landscape women operate in, and so they fall victim to what they refuse to see. As he once said, in individuals, insanity is rare. In groups, parties, nations, and epochs, it is the rule. And nowhere is this truer than in how men collectively fantasize about and misunderstand women. Integration. The only way out is through. So, what is the path forward? It is not to become cynical, nor to return to traditional gender roles, nor to adopt the emotionally flat strategies of the modern alpha male mythos. It is to integrate Tom, to face the inner feminine, to reclaim power from projection, to stop blaming women for not matching an ideal and start meeting them as they are. This means developing discernment, boundaries, self-respect, a relationship with solitude, reverence for mystery without the need for worship, and a commitment to truth, even when it hurts. Because when a man integrates the anima, when he stops seeking a mother, or savior, or a symbol, something powerful happens. He becomes whole. And from that wholeness, he can finally see a woman, not as an answer to his emptiness, but as a soul walking beside him, complex and complete in her own right. That is where true connection begins, when a man doesn't understand the truth about women, when he lives inside projection, fantasy, or silent resentment. The damage isn't always loud. It's quiet, invisible, slow, but over time, it eats away at his soul. And by the time he realizes it, he's often alone, or angry, or numb, or worse, surrounded by people, even in a relationship, yet more disconnected than ever. This is the silent epidemic. The slow erosion of the male psyche is caused not by women, but by a refusal to see them clearly. Let's explore what happens when a man learns these truths too late. 1. Emotional starvation in relationships. One of the most common consequences is emotional starvation, especially in long-term relationships. Many men enter relationships under the assumption that if they are supportive, giving, and consistent, love will flow naturally. But over time, something shifts. They begin to feel unseen, unheard, unmet. They can't explain why their partner isn't cruel. There's no abuse, but there's a quiet hollowness, a sense that they are pouring water into a well with no bottom. Why? because they never set the foundation for truth. They built the relationship on performance, on being agreeable, impressive, useful, not on being known. And now the price is disconnection. Nietzsche would say they betrayed themselves in the name of love. They wanted to be chosen more than they wanted to be real. And now they are starving in a relationship that feels like a stage play. 2. The collapse of identity. When a man projects an ideal woman onto a real human being and then loses her, it is not just heartbreak he experiences, it is identity collapse, because he made her the center of his universe, his muse, his motivator, his meaning. When she leaves, it's not just love he loses, it's purpose, structure, and self-worth. This is why breakups hit some men with such devastating force. They didn't just lose a person, the version of themselves they saw through her eyes, and that version may have been the only one they believed in. 3. Covert control and resentment. Many men, especially the nice guys Nietzsche would subtly mock, end up controlling women without realizing it, not with dominance, but with expectations. They give endlessly. They listen, support, compliment, provide, and beneath it all is a silent contract. I do all this so that you'll love me. But when that love doesn't come in the form they want, when the woman doesn't reciprocate with the same intensity or chooses someone else, the man doesn't know what to do with the pain. He becomes bitter, quietly, angry, resentful. He may even turn to philosophies or online communities that confirm his pain, not to heal, but to blame. Nietzsche would call this slave morality, the bitterness of the man who lives passively, then turns his powerlessness into a moral high ground. 4. Fear of the feminine. Some men, after enough betrayal or confusion, retreat. They don't become celibate monks. They still date. They may even sleep around, but inside, they've shut the gates. They no longer trust women, or more accurately, they no longer trust themselves with women. They keep things surface level. They avoid emotional depth. They smile and joke, but never let anyone in, because deep down, they're afraid that if they fall again, they'll lose themselves. This guardedness isn't strength, it's fear. It's a man who touched something sacred once and got burned. But Nietzsche would say, you didn't get burned by a woman. You got burned by your own illusion. 5. Loneliness in a world full of women. Perhaps the most tragic consequence is existential loneliness. It's not that women are absent. They're everywhere. But a man who has never truly seen the feminine, and who has never been seen by it, lives in exile. He may be successful, admired, even desired, but he feels like a foreigner, an outsider looking in, because connection requires truth, and truth requires inner integration, the courage to face one's neediness, one's fantasies, one's fears. Until then, the man is just wandering from one lover to the next, from one projection to the next, never arriving. Nietzsche wrote, he who has a why to live can bear almost anyhow, but without a real connection, not to a woman, but to the feminine within. A man loses his why, and life becomes mechanical, tiring, flat, from the past. These consequences aren't new. In Greek myth, the story of Orpheus and Eurydice captures this perfectly. Orpheus descends into the underworld to rescue his beloved. He is allowed to bring her back, on one condition: he must not look back. But he does, and in that one moment, he loses her forever. This is the story of the man who cannot face uncertainty. The man who, in his fear, kills the very thing he longs for. It's not the woman he loses. It's his trust in the unseen in Sufi mysticism. The feminine often represents the divine mystery, the beloved, the unknowable, Nawat, and the seeker's task is not to possess her, but to let her transform him. But when the seeker becomes possessive, when he tries to control the mystery instead of surrendering to it, he loses the thread. This is what Nietzsche warned of, not in religious terms, but in existential ones. Modern reflection, the inner blind spot. Today, the consequences show up everywhere, in divorce courts, in therapy rooms, in online forums filled with confused, angry, lonely men asking, "What do women want?" The truth is, they're not really asking about women. They're asking, why didn't my strategy work? Why didn't my goodness, my patience, my sacrifice earn me love? And the answer is hard to hear, because love isn't earned through performance. It's discovered through presence. The kind of presence that sees a woman as she is, not as she should be. But to do that, a man must first do the same with himself. The invitation to wake up. Nietzsche never wanted men to give up on love. He wanted them to give up on illusion, because only then can love become something real, not worship, not dependence, but a dance between equals, both whole, both flawed, both awake, and that kind of love. It doesn't come through fantasy, it comes through fire. So what now? You've seen the cost of illusion, how it fragments a man's love, blinds his sight, and slowly hollows him from within. But knowledge alone does not heal. Awareness is only the first gate. The real transformation happens in practice, in how you walk, speak, reflect, and most importantly, relate. Not just with women, but with yourself. Nietzsche never promised comfort. He offered a challenge to become the kind of man who sees, who dares to look without flinching, who does not need to be needed. This creates meaning, not from being loved, but from being awake. Let's explore the psychological and spiritual practices that lead you out of projection and into presence. 1. Shadow work. Meet the part of you that needs her. The first step is not about women at all. It's about you. It begins with what Jung called shadow work, the slow, honest excavation of all the things you've disowned. The hunger for approval, abandonment, the inner child who still believes that love must be earned through sacrifice. If you've ever felt rage when rejected, if you've ever chased love to the point of self-erasure, if you've ever felt empty after getting the girl, that is your shadow speaking. You must bring him into the light. Practice. Journal this prompt. What did I want her to give me that I haven't given myself? Okay. Then sit with the discomfort. Don't fix it. Just see it, because clarity begins when fantasy ends. 2. Stop worshiping. Start witnessing. The antidote. Witnessing to witness a woman is to be present with who she is, not who you want her to be. It is to notice her patterns, her speech, her needs, without making it about your worth. This is harder than it sounds, because witnessing requires stillness, curiosity, and the ability to hold space without chasing outcome. Practice on your next date or interaction. Try this inner mantra. Let me see what's real, not what I want to see. It will change how you listen, how you respond, how you feel. 3. Reclaim your will to power. Nietzsche believed that every individual had a driving force, a will to power. Not dominance over others, but mastery of the self. The ability to create meaning, direction, vision. Many men lose this when they fall in love. They make a woman their mission. She becomes the goal, the anchor, the reward. But this weakens the masculine spirit. The healthiest relationships are not built from need. They are built from overflow, to complete lives, intertwining, not colliding. Practice. Ask yourself daily, what am I building with or without her? And then build it. Pour your longing into your work, your craft, your body, your spiritual path. To make your energy gravitational dot. When you stop making her your sun, you become your own fire. 4. Develop discernment, not just desire. 2. Should I choose her? Most men operate from hunger. They meet a beautiful or emotionally resonant woman and immediately go all in. But attraction is not enough. Chemistry is not compatibility. You must observe how she handles conflict, how she speaks about others, whether she honors boundaries, how she treats your time, your ambition, your soul. This is not judgment. It's discernment. Practice. Make a non-negotiables list. It's not superficial traits, but values. Then hold to them, even when desire is strong. Desire fades. Kitty doesn't. 5. Rituals for wholeness. Meditation, especially practices that emphasize non-attachment. Test your thoughts about women. Don't indulge or repress. Just witness. Solitude, not isolation. Intentional solitude. Time spent in silence, in nature, in your own energy, to remember who you are without performance. Creative expression. Channel your longing, your frustration, your love into art, writing, movement. Let the feminine within move through you, not control you. Mentorship and brotherhood. Be around men who challenge your illusions, who call you out, who remind you of your mission when you forget it. These rituals rewire your nervous system. They teach your body that you are already enough, that you don't need to chase, convince, or seduce. Just stand, study the feminine without needing to own it. 7. Radical responsibility. The quiet strength of the integrated man. In the end, this journey is not about becoming untouchable. It's about becoming real. An integrated man doesn't hate women. He doesn't idolize them either. He honors them because he honors himself first. He no longer chases symbols. He looks life in the eye. He says yes to truth, even when it burns. And because of that, his love is not grasping. It is liberating. This is what Nietzsche wanted men to reclaim. Not dominance, not stoicism, but depth. Cupped, the quiet strength of someone who no longer seeks permission to exist. A man who sees, and therefore is seen. Some truths only make sense in hindsight, by the time a man realizes he was chasing an image, not a woman. The story has already played out. The text has already been sent. The silence has already grown heavy. Its heartbreak has already come and gone. All that's left is the echo. What was I really looking for? Nietzsche once said, "He who fights with monsters should look to it that he himself does not become a monster." And maybe that's the real danger. That in trying so hard to love, to rescue, to impress, to be chosen, a man loses the very thing that made him worthy of love in the first place, his truth. This is why Nietzsche was feared, misunderstood, even hated. He didn't just question morality or God. He questioned love, not to destroy it, but to purify it. He saw that men, when disconnected from their essence, often confuse need with love, idealism with insight, and submission with intimacy. And it cost them more than heartbreak. It costs them themselves. But this isn't a story of cynicism. This is a story of awakening. 'Cause some lessons, especially the ones about women, arrive late on purpose. You weren't meant to understand them at 19 or 25, or maybe even 35. They needed to be lived, broken open, grieved. You had to fall in love with the wrong one. You had to chase a fantasy. You had to mistake affection for devotion, beauty for loyalty, presence for permanence. Only then do you begin to see. No woman could save you, because you weren't lost. You were asleep, and now you're waking up, from projection to presence. When a man sees a woman clearly, without illusion or fear, something profound happens. He no longer demands from her what he has denied in himself. He no longer worships her smile as salvation. He no longer fears her independence, her mystery, her complexity. He simply meets her, human to human, soul to soul, not because he needs her to complete him, but because he has already met himself. This is the rarest kind of man, not emotionally numb, not performatively alpha, not obsessed with controlling outcomes, but present, embodied, deeply alive. He knows the feminine isn't here to obey him, fulfill him, or revolve around him. She is here to reflect him, to sharpen him, soften him, call him into deeper truth, and he welcomes that without flinching. The historical cycle continues. In every age, this blindness has repeated in the poems of Sappho, the tragedies of Sophocles, the sonnets of Shakespeare. We see the same longing, the same illusions, the same ache. Man meets woman. Man sees dream. Dream dissolves. Man either collapses awakens. It is not women who deceive men. It is the myth of womanhood that deceives. Nietzsche dared to say it. Jung dared to explain it. And now it is up to each man to embody it. Because we don't need more theories. We need presence, courage, depth. Men who can love without losing themselves. Men who can be alone without becoming bitter. Men who can walk beside women, not behind them or above them. A final reflection. So ask yourself, gently, where have I turned women into symbols instead of people? Where have I abandoned myself in pursuit of love? Where have I mistaken performance for presence? And most of all, what would change if I no longer needed to be chosen? These aren't just journal prompts. They are thresholds. And once you cross them, you don't go back, because the man who sees can no longer live as the man who doesn't. And that's the real lesson Nietzsche offers. Not bitterness, not detachment, but clarity. And with clarity comes a freedom deeper than love, deeper than sex, deeper than validation. The freedom of self-possession. From that place, you do not chase women, you invite truth. And some will walk away, but those who stay will meet a man who has met himself. If this video stirred something in you, good. That means you're not numb, you're not sleepwalking, you're not afraid to see, because the truth is, this video was never about women. It was about you, the man behind the mask. The boy who was never taught what to expect. The lover who gave everything but never quite knew what he was giving to. And the warrior who, somewhere along the way, forgot he was allowed to protect his own soul. 2. If you've learned these lessons late, you're not alone. Most of us do. But what matters now is this. Do you choose to stay blind, or do you start seeing clearly? Because this clarity isn't just for your relationships, it's for your entire life, for how you show up. It's how you speak your truth, how you walk into the world, not as someone begging to be loved, but as someone becoming love, fierce, rooted, free. So here's what I ask. Share this video with the man who's hurting, the man chasing illusions, the man who thinks he's broken because he can't win a woman's love. Comment below. What was the hardest truth you learned too late about women, and what did it teach you about yourself? And if this resonated, subscribe, because we're building something rare here. Not just a channel, but a brotherhood of awareness, where men don't just react, they reflect, they evolve. Because when men wake up, everything changes.